Yeah, they make some women's underwear all of a sudden he's fucking almost good, bro.
I'm just chilling with my boys and I can get it so woke, so woke, so woke, so woke. I'm just chilling with my boys and I can get it so woke, so woke.
Oh fuck! I criticize you. You locked the whole thing up. For feed, you gotta double check what keystrokes is he typing, what every goddamn thing. I want every goddamn thing. This piece of crap. I give a fuck. Watch, but stop fucking slowing it down, bro. You're allowed to follow us and take pictures. You're not allowed to stand in front of us. But if you want to, I know somebody's trying to run at me and run you too. None of that shit I put in the title. I'll do that another random time. Well, it occurs to me I use air conditioning. What the fuck are you doing? I'm not watching the video on that tab, bro. You're fucked with everything, man. Get the fuck out of here.
So woke, I'm just chilling with my boys and I can get it so woke, so woke, so woke. I'm just chilling with my boys and I can get it so woke, so woke, so woke. I'm just chilling with my.
You froze to go, homeboy. You ingenious. You're going to suppress
reported 0 locally transmitted COVID-19 cases for 56 days until June 11th, when the first case of the recent cluster infections emerged. Beijing's reported over 200 confirmed cases since then. Most of them are linked to the Xinfadi wholesale market, which has been temporarily closed.
He said funny things about naked women. I can't
Pepsi has suspended production at one of its food factories in Beijing after some of its staff members were confirmed to be infected with the novel coronavirus. Fan Zhimin is with the public relations director of PepsiCo Greater China. She says the company responded quickly after the first case was confirmed.
监测到新发地批发市场输入个案后 After our first confirmed case linked to the Xinfadi wholesale market was found, we immediately initiated an emergency response and took measures such as suspending production and operation, setting up the products, disinfecting the environment, and quarantining the personnel.
She adds that they've investigated the products in the factory environment and the tested products are safe. Products made after the infections have been sealed up and are banned from shipping out of the factory. All of the factory's employees have received nucleic acid tests and are now being quarantined at home. The factory mainly processes grains and produces potato-related food products such as chips. Chinese authorities have suspended imports of poultry from U.S. firm Tyson Foods. That move came after COVID-19 cases were reported among the employees of that meat processor. The General Administration of Customs says that meat products from the company that have already arrived in China will be temporarily sequestered. China's e-commerce platforms registered record-high sales during the mid-year online shopping festival amid the COVID-19 pandemic. And Sui has more.
Alibaba's online marketplace Tmall saw deals reach new highs of nearly 700 billion yuan, or about $100 billion. JD.com reported about 270 billion yuan in orders during the shopping festival, an increase of over 30% year-on-year. Other major platforms such as Suning.com also set a new record in sales. Dai Fengjun is a senior executive from Suning.com.
Suning has launched a variety of promotion programs to boost consumption, including providing more popular commodities and one-on-one services for customers, in addition to billions of dollars of subsidies. On June 10th alone, the sales volume on our platform increased over fivefold.
The June 18th festival started 6 years ago as a one-day event to mark JD.com's anniversary. Since then, it's been adopted by many other platforms and expanded to several weeks of promotions. Liu Hui is a data analyst from JD.com. He says based on the sales data, consumers have focused more on health products because of the impact brought by COVID-19.
Hygiene-related household appliance has been a highlight of consumption. For instance, refrigerators and humidifiers with antibacterial functions have seen a five-fold increase in sales on household appliance promotion day.
Liu adds that more people prefer to improve the quality of daily living amid the pandemic, resulting in a spike in the sales of kitchen goods. Consumers in Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou were the biggest buyers on JD.com. Moreover, the company's 24-hour logistics service covers 90% of counties and townships in the country. With the development of information technology, live streaming has become the main method of platforms to sell their products this year. Celebrities and corporate executives joined the live streaming sessions on Alibaba's Taobao Live, where over 30,000 stores on Taobao used live streaming to promote their products. The mid-year spending boom mirrors a steady recovery in China's retail consumer goods sales. Online sales increased by 4.5% year-on-year in the first 5 months, quickening by 2.8 percentage points from the first 4 months. For the Beijing Hour, I'm Sui.
New York City will enter phase 2 of reopening later today. Around 300,000 New Yorkers are expected to be able to return to work. The city has recorded more than 200,000 COVID-19 infections since March, with over 17,000 deaths. It started to ease pandemic restrictions 2 weeks ago. More on this, Wang Yue spoke to Jagriti Devi in the United States.
So what does phase 2 reopening mean for New York citizens?
Well, New York City will enter phase 2 as of Monday, and this means that things like outdoor dining will be available to people. It's not going to be New York as people remember it, but it's going to be a step towards some kind of normalcy. There's going to be reduced capacity of social distancing indoors, but there's going to be some outdoor dining on the pavements outside. Restaurants and bars have to be responsible for the pavements outside their area, outside their premises. Shops can reopen except for malls. Hair salons and barber shops can reopen, but the waiting area has to be closed. Offices can reopen again with reduced capacity. And what this really means is that several thousands and more people can return to work effectively. New York City's playgrounds are reopening, but team sports are still prohibited. And again, all the usual things like social distancing measures, keeping 6 feet apart, whether it's customers seated 6 feet apart or kids in the playground, and the wearing of masks is also required.
It's good to know that life is gradually returning to normal, but we still see a sharp rise in the daily number of new COVID-19 infections in many other parts of the United States. So how is the situation in New York City now?
Yes, indeed. Well, the governor of New York said that fewer than 1% of the COVID tests that were taken on Saturday tested positive. So he said that they're going in the right direction. There were 15 deaths in New York State on Saturday and 664 additional confirmed cases in New York State. So they're doing it cautiously in New York, and they're making sure they're going, as the governor said, they've got to continue going in the right direction, and they can't see any spikes. But there are concerns. Obviously, there are rising cases in other parts of the country, and the World Health Organization is saying that there's a new and dangerous phase of the virus that's emerging.
Is there a timetable for the city to enter the next stage of reopening?
The New York City is the only region that's in phase 1 at the moment, and there are other parts of the state that are in phase 2 and that are moving into phase 3. So the Mid-Hudson area will move into phase 3 on Tuesday, the 23rd. But as I say, they are going cautiously, and so the government has signed an executive order essentially allowing states to shut down businesses if they violate reopening guidelines. So whilst we are seeing a sort of a timetable of progression, there are measures in place to stop this progress if there are businesses that are seen violating, for example, those rules. Governor Cuomo also said he's concerned about rising cases in other states. He specifically Florida. He's concerned about people bringing COVID back into New York via travel. So he said there could be the imposition of a 14-day self-quarantine of people who come into New York from Florida. But as I say, the timetable at the moment is, New York City reopening on Monday, Mid-Hudson, other parts, Mid-Hudson reopening into phase 3 on Tuesday. But there are, different parts of the state are moving at different stages, and they will be looking closely to see if there are sharp spikes at any point, and they are ready to clearly stop that progress if it needs to happen.
That was Jagruti Devi in the United States, elaborating on the phase 2 reopening of New York City. German officials have forced over 6,500 employees and their families into quarantine after more than 1,000 staffers at an abattoir tested positive for coronavirus. Around 1,300 addresses have been placed under quarantine, with concern growing that the Gütersloh district will have to return to lockdown. North Rhine-Westphalia Premier Armin Laschet has blamed the recent spike in infections in the district on a meat processing plant.
Right here, we are dealing with the largest unabated infections situation. In the whole of North Rhine-Westphalia, infection numbers have gone down by over 75% since we reopened. But here in the Gütersloh district, we have a concentrated explosion in the number which are closely linked to the meat industry.
Companies suspended operations as authorities seek to control the outbreak, and they've promised to rectify the situation. Germany's management of the coronavirus crisis has been among the most successful in Europe. However, the country has seen repeated outbreaks in slaughterhouses whose employees are migrants living in crowded company-provided accommodation. Shops and bars have reopened in the country, albeit with social distancing, as government eases coronavirus restrictions across the country. And for more on COVID-19, subscribe to our podcast, Coronavirus, What's Really Going On, which brings you everything you need to know about the novel coronavirus. You're listening to the Beijing Hour. Coming up, a stabbing rampage in southern England is being called an act of terrorism.
The Beijing Hour. The Beijing Hour. The Beijing Hour brings you an hour of comprehensive news and information from China and the rest of the world. A mix of news, sports, and entertainment. In-depth analysis of the day's big stories, as well as the most comprehensive business of the day. The Beijing Hour. Your very own window to China and the rest of the world.
13 minutes past the hour. British police say the killing of 3 people in a stabbing rampage in southern England on Saturday is being treated as a terrorist attack. Liang Tao has more from London.
A 25-year-old Libyan national is being held by police over the deadly incident, in which at least 3 others sustained serious injuries. Thames Valley police say the attack has been declared a terrorist incident, but deny it's linked to an anti-racism protest that took place in Reading early in the day.
From our inquiries undertaken so far, officers have found nothing to suggest that there was anyone else involved in this attack. And presently, we are not looking for anyone else in relation to the incident.
Multiple sources have identified the suspect was Kari Sadlaha, a Libyan refugee. It's reported he had been granted asylum and had previously been imprisoned in the UK for a relatively minor conviction, not a terrorism offense. So far, Prime Minister Boris Johnson, Home Secretary Priti Patel, and the Labour leader Keir Starmer have been among senior public figures to express condolences to the family and friends of the victims. Johnson also said the government will make changes to the law if required.
If there are lessons to be learned, if there are changes that need to be made to our legal system to stop such events happening again, we will not hesitate to take that action, as we have before. You will recall over the automatic early release of terrorist offenders.
For the Beijing Hour, this is Liang Tao in London.
Russian President Vladimir Putin says he does not rule out the possibility of bidding for another presidential term if constitutional amendments are adopted. He made the remarks in a recent TV interview. Russia will hold a referendum on a set of constitutional amendments on July 1st. One of them will allow Putin to seek 2 more 6-year terms as president when his current mandate ends in 2024. The Trump administration is determined to end the Dreamers program that protects immigrants who entered the United States illegally as children within the next 6 months. Last week, the U.S. Supreme Court blocked the administration from going ahead with ending the program. Department of Homeland Security acting head Chad Wolf says the court did not disagree that the program was unlawful, but ruled against the procedure that was followed.
We need to find a solution for this population, and we'll continue to look at that. We'll continue to look at the opinion that the court produced this week, making sure that we adhere to that. But we are going to end an unlawful program. As the acting Secretary of Homeland Security, I don't have the luxury to ignore the law. The program's unlawful. We need to solve it.
The U.S. Supreme Court blocked Trump's effort to end the Obama-era Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals policy. DACA protects around 650,000 immigrants who enter the country illegally as children from deportation. The decision upheld lower court decisions that found that Trump's 2017 move to rescind the program was unlawful. Trump on Saturday said that he would resubmit plans to end the policy. U.S. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer has called for an investigation into the firing of a federal prosecutor whose office had been investigating President Donald Trump's personal lawyer. Schumer says Berman is a well-regarded public servant who is doing a good job and questioned the real reasons for his removal.
Late Friday night, the President and Attorney General Barr carried out an ugly, ham-handed plot to try and oust the U.S. Attorney, Jeffrey Berman. I am calling for a 3-pronged investigation to find out what happened and why. I am also calling for Mr. Berman to come testify before Congress.
Berman's office is currently investigating Rudy Giuliani and was involved in the probe that led to Trump's former lawyer, Michael Cohen, being imprisoned. He refused to resign until the Senate confirmed his successor and said his office's investigations would continue. On Saturday, he later agreed to step down when Barr changed his initial plan to hand-pick the U.S. attorney, allowing Berman's deputy, Audrey Strauss, to replace him. At least 135 former federal prosecutors have signed a petition accusing Trump and Barr of undermining confidence in the country's criminal judicial system. The Iranian Deputy Minister of Justice for Human Rights says the country is ready to swap prisoners with other countries on humanitarian grounds amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Mahmoud Abbasi says they have extradited over 100 Iranian prisoners from Georgia and transferred a number of foreign prisoners to their own countries over the past couple of months. He says over 2,000 Afghan convicts in Iran can also be transferred to their country. Iran has also announced its readiness to extradite 44 Pakistani prisoners and is awaiting the country's response. It's also swapped prisoners with the United States.
You keep them stupid.
Panamanian authorities have exhumed 19 bodies in a private cemetery in Panama City as they search for victims of the 1989 invasion by the United States. The bodies were buried 30 years ago after initially being dumped in mass graves during the December 1989 to January 1990 invasion. Trinidad Ayola is the president of the Association of Relatives of the Fallen.
We have been working hard for 30 years, making all the efforts so that they can find inner peace, because we know this pain. We know the pain of having someone, a family member, missing, and we are doing everything possible. Perhaps not everyone has the opportunity to know the whereabouts of their loved ones.
The bodies were dug up at a site holding around 100 graves. Panamanian official estimates show that around 300 civilians died in the assault and 23 American soldiers died during the invasion. But human rights organizations have long estimated the figure to be higher, prompting the government to establish a commission to investigate the number of deaths. Many Panamanians commemorate the event each year and have called for December 20th to be declared a day of national mourning.
Isn't that technically twice a year?
A top advisor of Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas says that Palestinians reject any annexation of the Jordan Valley and West Bank settlements by Israel. Nabil Abu Rudena says this is an issue of principle and that the Palestinian leadership will maintain the fight for this national position.
The Palestinian people have come a long way
The coming 10 days are dangerous and crucial. Accordingly, we will see if the American administration and Israel retract their position, despite our lack of confidence with the Israel and the American administrations.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's vowed to annex the Jordan Valley and all Israeli West Bank settlements. Netanyahu's plan is in line with President Donald Trump's Middle East plan, which has been rejected by the Palestinians. The process could begin as early as July 1st. European and Arab countries have warned that Israel's move would violate international law and threaten any hopes of a two-state solution. Police in Stuttgart have arrested over 20 people following attacks on officers and police vehicles in the German city. The violent clashes, reportedly sparked by a police search for drugs, have left several officers injured and stores vandalized and looted. Thomas Berger is with Stuttgart Police and says several hundred people have been involved.
This was a completely routine intervention for us, but immediately 200 to 300 people who were party revelers and people out on a Saturday night grouped together and immediately started seriously attacking the police by throwing stones and bottles. The colleagues were then able to, with massive reinforcements, succeed in pushing back those people a bit. But the group grew steadily and then increased to 400 to 500 people on the Schlossplatz not far from the site where the drug checks had taken place.
An investigation is underway for more information, and more information is expected to be provided. You're listening to the Beijing Hour. Coming up, a report says China will become an aged society in the next couple of years.
Really?
Want to know what's trending in China? China Plus News Facebook page helps you to discover the real China. From the latest news to quirky Chinese inventions, videos, photos, live streaming, and more. Join in the conversation today by searching for China Plus News on Facebook and discover its news, its people, its traditions and culture. China Plus News Facebook page. Open your eyes to the real China.
It's 22 minutes past the hour now. Government officials in Hong Kong are voicing support after China's top legislature reviewed a draft national security law for the city. Priscilla Leung chairs the panel on administration of justice and legal services at Hong Kong's Legislative Council.
我们实际上香港社会有绝大部分的市民都是热切期待。
The majority of our citizens in Hong Kong are now eagerly expecting this law to take effect as soon as possible. We need a national security law for Hong Kong to make Hong Kong return to its normal life and become a peaceful and civilized society. Hong Kong will definitely not become a loophole to national security.
The city's experienced social unrest with frequent violence over the past year. Wong Yukshan is the president of the Open University of Hong Kong.
I believe the legislation is very important and necessary because we have seen a lot of violent incidents with many public facilities vandalized, which is in sabotage of social tranquility. If it continues, there's no chance for Hong Kong to develop in the future.
Digital marketing professional Ivan Leung says the chaos has severely disrupted his business.
Firms are more conservative now, not as positive as before. It affects my business too, since I provide B2B digital marketing and advisory services to companies to help them secure their clients.
The draft national security law for Hong Kong provides that the central government will establish an office of safeguarding national security in the city, while Hong Kong shall establish a commission for safeguarding national security chaired by its chief executive. A report published by the China Development Research Foundation says that China will become an aged society in the next couple of years. It says that 1 in 7 in the country will be 65 or older. Guoyan has more.
An aged society is defined by the United Nations as a country where over 14% of the population is at or above the age of 65. Data from the National Bureau of Statistics showed that in the year 2000, the percentage of that age group in China was 7, while it surged to 12% in 2018. People younger than 14 years old accounted for 23% in 2000, and the number declined to 17% in 2018. China's birth rate fell to its lowest point in nearly 7 decades last year. The number of newborns dropped by 580,000 to over 14.6 million, with a birth rate standing at about 10 per 1,000. Professor Wang Weilong of the Social Security Department of the Guangdong University of Economy and Finance addresses the negative impacts of having an aging population.
First of all, the size of the labor force will decrease, and the ratio of the elderly who need to be cared for will increase. Secondly, it further strengthens the supply of pension services. Lastly, it may change our country's savings and spending structure, as older people tend to consume less than the younger ones.
The professor adds that the aging population is pushing the country to improve its social service system for the elderly.
The pension service should focus more on planning for the future, preparing to cover the whole life cycle of a person. Meanwhile, we should pay attention to both the material and spiritual needs of elderly people to improve the quality of their lives.
China also issued a long-term plan last year to cope with the problem of an aging population. It's calling for a steady increase of pension reserves and for establishing a lifelong learning system for senior citizens to increase the supply of labor in the aging society. It's estimated by the middle of the century, people aged 65 and above may account for around 30% of its population in China. For the Beijing Hour, this is Guo Yan.
Report shows that Beijing, Shanghai, and Shenzhen rank top 3 on the list of business environments among major Chinese cities. Wenjie has more.
A ranking of overall business environment for Chinese cities is included in this year's China Urban Business Environment Report released last week. The result comes from a survey conducted on 36 major Chinese cities. Hai Wen is a professor at Peking University HSBC Business School.
The evaluation system contains many factors, including infrastructure, public service, human resources, and financial services. It aims to evaluate the business environment of these cities comprehensively.
Feng Kui is with the Chinese Institute of Business Administration. He explains why these factors were considered.
For example, how to get financial support and government services is among the difficulties Chinese cities face in improving their business environment.
The report also includes a ranking of overall business environment for economically vibrant cities. It is based on a survey conducted on cities that are ranked among the top 100 in terms of their GDP volumes in 2018. Major cities like Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou are not included. Suzhou ranks first on the list, followed by Nantong, Yantai, Wuxi, and Dongguan. Wuxi Mayor Du Xiaogang says much work has been done to improve governmental services.
Government workers are asked to try everything possible to help enterprises overcome their difficulties. It has always been our priority to provide better services to enterprises.
China has made great efforts in improving its business environment in recent years. Last year, a World Bank report says the ranking of how easy it is to do business in China climbed to 31 from 46 compared with a year earlier. For the Beijing Hour, this is Wenjie.
It's time for a short break. So far this hour, Beijing's more than doubled the number of nucleic acid tests it conducts daily amid the recent COVID-19 outbreak in the city. Police in the UK say a deadly stabbing rampage in southern England is being treated as an act of terrorism. And government officials in Hong Kong are voicing support after a review of the new national security law for the city. Shane Bigham with you. Stay with us here on the Beijing Hour.
Examining the events that impact and shape China and the rest of the world. This is the Beijing Hour, 1 hour of news and information brought to you every weekday. Now here's your host,
Shane Bigham with you on this Monday morning. Still to come in business. A Chinese insurance company is debuted on the Shanghai-London Stock Connect program. In sports, weekend action from the English Premier League. In entertainment, the first Hollywood box office numbers since the COVID-19 lockdown have been reported. Now checking the day's headlines, Chinese authorities have suspended imports of poultry from U.S. firm Tyson Foods. The move came after COVID-19 cases were reported among the employees of that meat processor. The General Administration of Customs says that meat products from the company that have already arrived in China will be temporarily sequestered. Pepsi has suspended production of one of its food factories in Beijing after some of its staff members were confirmed to be infected with the novel coronavirus. Van Germin is the public relations director of PepsiCo Greater China. She says the company responded quickly after the first case was confirmed.
监测到新发地批发市场输入个案后 After our first confirmed case linked to the Xinfadi wholesale market was found, we immediately initiated an emergency response and took measures such as suspending production and operation, setting up the products, disinfecting the environment, and quarantining the personnel.
She adds that they have investigated the products and the factory environment, and the tested products are safe. The products made after the infections have been sealed up and are banned from shipping out of the factory. All of the factory's employees have received nucleic acid tests and are now being quarantined at home. The factory mainly processes grains and produces potato-related food products such as chips. China's e-commerce platforms registered record-high sales during the mid-year online shopping festival amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Alibaba's online marketplace, Tmall, saw deals reach new highs of nearly 700 billion yuan, or roughly $100 billion. JD.com recorded about 270 billion yuan in orders during the shopping festival, an increase of 30% year-on-year. Other major platforms such as Suning.com also set new records in sales. New York City will enter phase 2 of reopening later on today. Around 300,000 New Yorkers are expected to be able to return to work now. The city has recorded more than 200,000 COVID-19 infections since March, with over 17,000 deaths. It started to ease pandemic restrictions 2 weeks ago. Russian President Vladimir Putin says that he does not rule out the possibility of bidding for another presidential term if constitutional amendments are adopted. He made the remarks in a recent TV interview. Russia will hold a referendum on a set of constitutional amendments on July 1st. One of them will allow Putin to seek 2 more 6-year terms as president when his current mandate ends in 2024. The Iranian Deputy Minister of Justice for Human Rights says the country is ready to swap prisoners with other countries on humanitarian grounds amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Mahmoud Abbasi says they have extradited over 100 Iranian prisoners from Georgia and transferred a number of foreign prisoners to their own countries over the past couple of months. He says over 2,000 Afghan convicts in Iran can also be transferred to their country. Iran has also announced its readiness to extradite 44 Pakistani prisoners and is awaiting the country's response. It's also swapped prisoners with the United States. A top advisor to Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas says that Palestinians reject any annexation of the Jordan Valley and West Bank settlements by Israel. Nabil Abu Rudena says this is an issue of principle and that the Palestinian leadership will maintain and fight for this national position.
The Palestinian people have come a long way. The coming 10 days are dangerous and crucial. Accordingly, we will see if the American administration and Israel retract their position, despite our lack of confidence with the Israel and the American administrations.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed to annex the Jordan Valley and all Israeli West Bank settlements. Netanyahu's plans in line with President Donald Trump's Middle East plan, which has been rejected by the Palestinians. The process could begin as early as July 1st. European and Arab countries have warned that Israel's move would violate international law and threaten any hope for a two-state solution. Panamanian authorities have exhumed bodies in a private cemetery in Panama City as they search for victims of the 1989 invasion by the United States. The bodies were buried 30 years ago after initially being dumped in mass graves during the December 1989 to January 1990 invasion. The bodies were dug up at a site holding around 100 graves. Panamanian official estimates show that around 300 civilians died in the assault and 23 American soldiers died during the invasion. But human rights organizations have long estimated the figure to be higher, prompting the government to establish a commission to investigate the number of deaths. Many Panamanians commemorate the event each year and have called for December 20th to be declared a national day of mourning. This is Shane Bigham live from the Chinese capital. Coming up in business, increased natural gas and oil output in China.
One thing after another with this.
You're listening to the Beijing Hour. 60 minutes of comprehensive news. Your window on China and the world.
36 minutes past the hour. Turning to business now. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell is expected to reassure markets this week. Global investors will pay attention to what the central bank will do to help the U.S. economy heal. Market participants will also keep a close eye on the continued effects of COVID-19 on the economy, as an uptick in new infections has been reported in many places, including California, Texas, and Florida. Apple says it'll be closing some stores in these places due to the spikes in coronavirus cases. Traders will also follow the latest improvements of business reopening in a number of areas, such as airlines, cruise lines, and hotels. They'll also take a look at how stocks in these sectors will perform on the market. On the U.S. economic calendar, preliminary private sector PMI reports for June are due out on Tuesday. Thursday's initial jobless claims data will draw investors' attention. Also in focus are personal spending numbers for May. Other figures to be released this week include finalized first quarter GDP numbers and housing data. Meantime, a big number of big companies such as Nike will report earnings later this week. In Europe, investors will take a look at preliminary private sector PMI reports for June for France, Germany, and the Eurozone. China Pacific Insurance's global depository shares have debuted on the London Shanghai Stock Connect program in a listing that raised $1.8 billion US. CPIC is only the second company to list on the Stock Connect after Huatai Securities completed a GDR listing in June of last year. Full trading in London starts today. Insurance giant Swiss Re has agreed to acquire up to nearly 29 million GDRs in the offer. Chinese firm reported its net profit stood at $1.2 billion US in the first quarter of this year, a gain of 50% year on year. On this, we spoke to principal consultant Mike Baston with Business Development International. Now, how significant is the China Pacific Insurance listing in London?
I think it's very significant. I think obviously London's still a centre of financial services around the world, if not the centre, or certainly one of the top three. And it's another example of the Chinese economy integrating with the West, Chinese companies and the financial services sector expanding internationally. So it's good for all.
And so what's your take on the performance of insurance companies in China?
I think the performance is mixed. I think it's a difficult sector, and I think it's a sector that needs to change and will adapt. And I think going back to the first question, any involvement from the West and learning from the West, particularly from the financial centre in London, is only a good thing.
So jointly advanced by the Chinese and British governments back in 2015, the Stock Connect scheme is expected to support capital market cooperation between China and Britain. So what opportunities can investors from both sides expect for the year amid uncertainties, including Brexit and COVID-19?
I think it's quite difficult to say. I think that there will be opportunities. I think it remains to be seen just how great those opportunities will be. Hopefully things will stabilise more and more, and there should be opportunities for further collaboration between London and China, the Chinese insurance sector, and also other parts of Europe. So I think certainly there's going to be opportunities. I think it's really a case of being very, very patient and taking those opportunities very, very carefully and very, very steady growth, hopefully as we extricate ourselves from this pandemic and then move to a more stable global economy.
And that was Principal Consultant Mike Baston with Business Development International, talking about China Pacific Insurance GDRs on the London Shanghai Stock Connect program.
This one's 6 inches from
China will begin trading futures for low sulfur fuel on the Shanghai International Energy Exchange later today. The first day of trading is expected to see a batch of contracts for monthly deliveries from January to June next year, with a benchmark price of more than 2,300 yuan per ton. The trading center conducted 2 trading drills for the futures earlier this month. And during the trial trading on Sunday, the daily turnover involving around 200,000 transactions reached 5 billion yuan. Low sulfur oil is an important fuel for maritime transport. The launch of the futures will allow overseas investors to manage risk and advance the steady operation of the sector.
Oh, the losses, isn't it? Yeah, the losses.
Shanghai and Shenzhen bourses had more than 1.2 million new investors in May, up 5% from the same period last year. By the end of May, the number of securities investors reached 178 million, up by 8.5% year on year. The settlement hit 105 trillion yuan, roughly 15 trillion US dollars in May. That was a gain of 1.4% year on year. The Shanghai Stock Exchange has announced it will adjust the calculation methodology of the benchmark Shanghai Composite Index to better reflect market performance. From July 22nd this year, the index will include stocks listed on China's Sci-Tech Innovation Board, known as the STAR, to increase the weighting of emerging technology industries and therefore reveal structural changes in the Shanghai market. The adjusted index will also include red chip companies or companies registered overseas but operating on the Chinese mainland to be listed on the Shanghai market by issuing China depository receipts. Under the new calculation scheme, newly listed stocks in the Shanghai market shall be included in the index 1 year after debut, while new stocks that rank among the market's top 10 in terms of daily average market value will be included after 3 months after their debut. With more on this, Joe Feng spoke to Sarah Xu, a visiting scholar of Fudan University.
What is the strategic significance of improving the calculation methodology of the benchmark Shanghai Composite Index?
The new methodology will help to improve the stability of the index and therefore promote long-term and rational investment. The stocks that are already included in the index will be removed from the calculation if they receive a risk warning from the stock exchange. But they can be re-included when the warning is revoked.
Compared with its Hong Kong counterpart, how could the Shanghai Stock Exchange attract overseas registered mainland companies for possible relisting back home?
Some mainland companies are likely to relist back home because of some recent U.S. legislation that has required companies to certify that they're not owned or controlled by a foreign government, and also to open their books to the U.S. Public Company Accounting Oversight Board. So this is likely to bring some mainland companies that have been overseas to return home. In addition, the instability in Hong Kong can induce these mainland companies to choose Shanghai instead of Hong Kong. You know, because of all of these factors and also because of the commitment of the mainland regulators to stability in general, the Shanghai Stock Exchange looks increasingly attractive.
As we know, China's securities regulator has positioned Shanghai as a global financial center in the future. So what role will the city's stock exchange play in this process?
China is continuing to open up to the outside world, and as it continues to do so, Shanghai is going to become increasingly attractive as a global financial center. There's also an increasing amount of financial innovation that can help transform China's financial system. Also, in recent years, there's been an increase in financial regulation that's been implemented, and this has helped to improve the overall market stability in China and reduce risk. So all of these things will help to boost Shanghai as a global financial center.
That was Sarah Xu, a visiting scholar of Fudan University, talking about the improvement of the benchmark Shanghai Composite Index. The value of bonds issued in China last month reached 4.8 trillion yuan, the same as the amount that was issued back in April. Treasury bonds stood at 680 billion yuan, while local government bond issuance was 1.3 trillion. Financial bonds issued last month were valued at 850 billion yuan. China has the world's second largest bond market, which is growing rapidly and opening wider to overseas investors. Last year, the country issued bonds worth 45 trillion yuan, a gain of 3% from the previous year. Performance checks on a Chinese-made magnetic levitation train with a design top speed of 600 kilometers per hour have been conducted in Shanghai. During the first trial run, more than 200 components were analyzed. The train maker says preliminary checks have found the vehicle to be stable. It also says the research and development of a new 5-car prototype is going smoothly. It is scheduled to roll off the production line sometime this year. Official data shows that China's manufacturing sector saw a surge in new loans in the first 5 months of this year as the country strengthened financial support amid the COVID-19 pandemic. More than 1.4 trillion yuan, roughly 200 billion US dollars worth of new loans has flowed to Chinese manufacturers, up 10% year on year. That's the highest growth since 2014. During the first 5 months, new loans to the manufacturing sector accounted for 11% of all new loans, 6.7 percentage points higher than at the level of the beginning of the year. You're listening to the Beijing Hour. Coming up in sports, we have weekend results from the English Premier League.
The Beijing Hour.
from X-Men Days of Future Past. You are listening to the Beijing Hour.
Hi, I'm Kathy Freeman. You're listening to the Beijing Hour.
Hi everyone, I'm Lang Lang. Welcome to the Beijing Hour.
The Beijing Hour, your window to China and
the
world.
Dog?
It's 47 past the hour now. Turning to sports, here's Young Guang.
Thank you, Shane. In the English Premier League, Liverpool had to settle for 1 point in their return to action with a goalless draw with the city rival Everton. It was a game that featured two understandably rusty sides after more than 3 months out of action. Liverpool manager Jurgen Klopp says a draw is acceptable at this stage.
And Everton was obviously here to make our life difficult. They did. Good. That's how it is. And then they have quality in this areas, and they could have won the game. But I think the point is the deserved result.
Liverpool now needs 5 points to be sure of their first league title in 30 years. Meanwhile, 2 second-half goals inside 2 minutes from Christian Pulisic and Oliver Giroud gave Chelsea a 2-1 comeback win at Aston Villa. Chelsea manager Frank Lampard.
Yeah, I'm pretty pleased with the performance. Aston Villa had obviously the opportunity to do this one time before us. So things were new for us. When we dominate, we need to be more clinical. I can definitely give the players some leeway for that one because it's been a long time off. And we showed great character and quality in the second half to win the game.
In the Spanish La Liga, Real Madrid beat Real Sociedad 2-1 to retake lead from Barcelona. Sergio Ramos and Karim Benzema scored 2 second-half goals, and Real is now level with defending champion Barca, but with goal difference advantage. 8 rounds remain in La Liga. Italian Serie A returned to action over the weekend after the season was suspended in March following the coronavirus pandemic. The opening match day featured Hellas Verona's 2-1 win over Cagliari. Cagliari manager Walter Zenga says it feels great to finally get back in the stadium.
I think personally, as I have not been on the bench for a few months, it's been a bit particular as for everybody else. Like, for example, the media and for the referee too. We have returned, and then you realize that step by step, things are getting back to normal. But obviously, to play in an empty stadium makes the difference.
In Sunday's action, Inter Milan strengthened their grip on 3rd place following a 2-1 win over Sampdoria in their first game back. Atlanta also celebrated their return with a 4-1 thrashing of Sassuolo. An emotional tribute to the victims of the coronavirus pandemic in the city of Bergamo was paid before the match between the two local teams. In basketball, after a 5-month suspension due to the coronavirus pandemic, the CBA returned to action behind closed doors over the weekend in Qingdao and Dongguan. Highlights in Sunday's action included Shandong's 84-83 comeback win over Tianjin. Tianjin's Liu Shuai made a corner 3 to tie the score 83-all with 54 seconds left. Shandong only took the narrow win.
It'll fill up the RAM and fuck ever. What am I doing? I don't even know anymore. You got everything so fucked up on this system. Holy fuck.